This is Art Sense, a podcast focused on educating and informing listeners about the past, present, and future of art. I'm Craig Gould. As a midweek bonus for listeners, we have a recording of my panel discussion from NFT.NYC 2022, titled The Bridge Between Traditional Art and NFT Art. The discussion was moderated by art advisor Nina Kong-Surtees, and in addition to me, the panelists included artist Mary Lai and Known Origin co-founder David Moore. As a heads up, there's a 3-minute period about 15 minutes in where the audio gets a little distorted, but hang in there because it goes right back to normal. And now, trying to build that traditional art world bridge at NFT.NYC.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Good morning. Yeah. Well,
pretty chill in here, which is good.
Absolutely. Well, I want to first take this moment to thank NFT.NYC for hosting this amazing event and this panel, and really appreciate all of you for being here bright and early. So kudos for you for joining the conversation. I'm Nina Kong-Surtees. I am so thrilled and excited to be here and be moderating this amazing panel. So today's conversation is on the bridge between traditional art and NFT art. I'm the founder and chief art legacy advisor of Smart Advisory. I've been cultivating artists' career and legacies in the art world for 20 years and Web3 since late 2018. I'm also an art historian, art educator, curator, and one of the mentors of the artist cohorts in the mentoring program with the Sachs Foundation. Our panel is also excited to deep dive and offer diverse perspective on the disconnect and the challenges in the adapting Web3 in the traditional art space and practices. In today's discussion, we're going to deconstruct some of the misconceptions about NFTs and ways to close the gap between the traditional and NFTs. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists of artists and leaders in the creative industry and the art world. So David, please, let's start with you to kick us off. Tell us about yourself and what ways you are bridging the gap between the traditional art and the NFTs.
Awesome intro. Thank you. I want to thank NFT.NYC quickly just for bringing me onto this panel. We had a quick discussion last week on Zoom and it went into some really interesting places, so I'm super excited to be here. I'm David Moore, one of 3 co-founders of a digital art platform called Known Origin. We launched back in 2018 after a discussion about how I could basically showcase and sell digital pieces in the same way as traditional artwork. And then from there, we have built a community around a platform over the last 4.5 years. And the mission has always been to empower creators to earn a living from the thing that they love doing. And if we can build things and tools to make that happen, that was how we started, really. We actually started with a physical event. And I think some of the physical art events that I've been to whilst here have really shown how the space has moved a lot and evolved. We started really DIY, lo-fi, back in 2018. So it was a mix of physical artworks and digital screens and projectors. But I guess if people can find footage of it from back then, it probably would look quite crude. But it was all about the concept of, can you sell digital pieces in the same way as physical art? And that's where we started. And then we quickly pivoted to just digital because we found the idea of selling digital files as valuable assets really interesting. And the 2 tech founders, Andy and James, they're some of the smartest blockchain engineers out there. So I'm a creative at heart. I have 15 years in the creative industries. I worked with the 2 co-founders for many years before we got into crypto. I told them a story about how I wanted to create a pop-up gallery ultimately I had no kind of almost right to do that. I'm not a gallerist. I'm not a curator. I just have creative friends that I wanted to showcase their work because I collected it over years, and I thought this was a great time to do it. Back in 2018, I got a space and I said, I'm going to put all this artwork in this space. Come along and check it out. And at the time, there was a thing called CoinFest. I've done the thing where my intro is the talk, right? Sorry, that was just my intro. I'm David Moore from Known Origin Digital Art Marketplace. Apologies.
Hi, guys. My name is Mary Lai. Thank you all for coming so early in the morning to listen to us talk. I'm a visual artist. I've been in the creative industry for the past 20 years. I designed fashion accessories and then transferred to creating art, fine arts, visual arts full-time. I feel like right now is such an exciting time to be an artist because you have that option to not only sell physical artwork, but you could now sell digital artwork, and that wasn't the case before. So for me, I'm just excited to be an artist during this time. Thank you.
Well, my name is Craig Gould, and I am the head of content and partnerships for Canvia. We are one of the oldest digital art frame brands, and so that company started roughly 5 years ago. We've been shipping U.S., Canada, continental Europe for going on 3 years, and a year and a half ago, I had our engineering team figure out how to go from our original vision for the company, which was providing the ultimate experience for viewing traditional historical fine art, and all of our patents were around that authentic viewing experience. How can we expand and answer the needs of the NFT market? So we were the first digital frame to offer the crypto wallet integration, and so in that role, I talked to a lot of marketplaces. I talked to different platforms, and I'm also the host of an Art World podcast, and it's called Art Sense. And in that role, I weekly have conversations with museum curators, authors, artists, collectors, about all things related to the art world, traditional art world, crypto art world. And it gives me a lot of access and insight into the art world from a lot of different levels. And so those are relationships and conversations that I have weekly. But also, being able to sit down and have conversations with gallerists at art fairs about the pulse of what's going on.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. But I want to start with you, Craig, because you just mentioned a couple points about, your work is intersecting between art and technology, and you also interview many curators, people in the art world. So what are the observations, the key observations that you've noticed, the common patterns that you could share with us?
Sure. Well, I think, some of the key observations that I have is that, when we start talking about bridging the crypto art world and the traditional art world, in the traditional art world, there's a clear gatekeeper, and that's the gallerist, right? And the galleries are that gatekeeper, and they're the consultant for both the artist and the collector, right? And so they're at the center of the transaction. And for both of those parties, the traditional artists and the collectors, they are going to move when the gallerist tells them that it's time to move, right? And so, there was a survey recently done by Artsy that said, okay, amongst, they surveyed thousands of traditional art collectors. The traditional art collecting space is a $65 billion space. Of those that were surveyed, they found that no more than 5% of traditional art collectors have dabbled in NFTs. At a recent art fair, I was sharing that comment with a gallerist, and she was like, well, that's shocking because I can't imagine that number being higher than 2%. And started having a conversation about, well, what is the issue? Why are gallerists not getting more getting on board with traditional art, entering the NFT space, because they see the value. I can hear they're like, we would love to have a strategy. However, I don't, my customers, the collectors, they're baby boomers. They're not tech savvy. I don't want to pull my customer through the keyhole. I can't go to them and say, I need you to buy this particular cryptocurrency. I need you to open a wallet, because it's too much. They feel like they would strain their relationship with their customer. And so the other part, which I see from our end, is the importance of display. People consume art for different reasons, and the traditional art collector isn't necessarily consuming for investment. So it's not so much a collectible. That's a tertiary benefit. For them, it's I'm passionate about it, that it moves the needle for me emotionally, and they want to be able to display it because, for centuries, you go all the way back to the Dutch masters, people want to be able to have something they can put on their wall and brag about, look at my shiny, lovely, collectible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always been like slow adoption in the art world when it comes to like especially technology. I think like the traditional, like the institutions, they're a little bit hesitant to adopt like new technology because it's a partly conservation issue, and there's the barrier is really high, right? Like the education is also lacking, and especially in the NFT marketplace, I think one of the criticism is that there's lack of curation. Like there's not thoughtful curation, right? Like even like good talents are like saturated, like get shuffled in the noise, and there's always a lot of hype around like the whole marketplace. So I want to turn this question to Mary, right? I would love to hear some perspective, the artist's perspective in terms of like, it'll be really, would love to know like what made you get into NFT space, because I know you come from a very traditional tactile like art background, but what made you decide that the NFTs are the right practice for you as a way of expanding your career?
Before, creating physical artwork, paintings, mixed media artwork, it's been great. And those traditional art collectors, none of my collectors have bought my digital NFT artwork. But I feel like the digital NFT artwork opens up a whole new art appreciator and art collector. So I find it like now artists have two lanes they could go in between selling physical artwork and digital artwork. So I'm kind of here for kind of straddling both. But when I see other artist friends that are like, oh, I don't believe in NFTs, or they don't want to get into the whole kind of NFT artwork channel, I feel like it's more that they don't have the right education or the security and the tools kind of given to the artist. So I think we still have a lot more to catch up on when it comes to the bridging that gap between artists that create physical artwork and digital artwork. And I think we're getting there, but I think as we kind of show up and then show how we can be an example for it, then hopefully we'll onboard more of our artist friends and even have art collectors that buy our physical artwork to then soon buy our digital artwork as well.
Amazing, amazing. Now, same question for you, David, as a collector's perspective and as well as like the marketplace perspective. So what are the challenges like you've seen, and how are you guys navigating in the NFT marketplace?
Yeah, I think for me, we're classed as like a gated community or a gated platform because there are kind of submission windows that the artists have to apply for, and then they get reviewed, and then we enable them as creators, and only at that point can they start uploading artwork and creating collections on known origin. I'm not a curator, I'm not a gallerist. I've never kind of put it out there that that's my role. I'm from the creative industries. So what we do is we partner with credible curators. So people like Mokta, Lumen Pride, Hoffa, which is House of Fine Art in London, the Gazelier. So we see the need for creation and discovery. It is a noisy space. And I think it's having these like creative partnerships, it's the way we solve that problem. And those relationships work both ways. So they introduce us to really interesting artists and creators and collectors. And then we work together on putting either a physical event together that brings their audience to meet our audience and to introduce them kind of in a safe space into because if you look at it from the outside looking in online, it looks insane, right? If you've never experienced NFT.NYC and you're looking at it from the outside, it looks crazy. So that you have to go meet people in their safe spaces to introduce them to it. So we do things in London sometimes, we've got a thing in Soho today. So yeah, we have to go and meet them halfway and then educate them and bring them into the space. And we do it through kind of credible partnerships with gallerists, galleries, and curators.
Yeah, and speaking of like going back to you, David, I want to elaborate, expand on like how do you engage them? Like what was their initial reaction when you first approached them? Because I know that there's still like a little bit of disconnect, and there's still like a little bit of resistance in terms of adapting, because of the noise and all that hype. So like, how do you really engage them directly so that they're bringing more quality artwork and artists?
So, how far do you want to go back? Because back in 2018, 2019, they thought I was mad, so I would literally go into physical galleries, get my phone out, and tell them about this new thing called rare digital art. And they're like, but where is it? I'm like, it's on my phone, it's here. And they're like, what, do you ship it out once they buy it? And I'm like, no, it's just digital. And they literally politely asked me to kind of leave the gallery. But then over time, now, our inbox is kind of full with institutions, galleries, creators reaching out to us. So it's kind of like flipped full 360. Yeah, back in the early days, I was the guy that was like being kind of asked politely to leave. And now I'm getting invited to things like this, and I'm getting invited to like art-focused panels in London where before we would try and kind of break into that scene. Now they understand that the creator kind of has the power here in this space. So it's kind of flipped it on its head. So they're reaching out to either creators directly, or they're reaching out to platforms that they think have shared kind of values or shared principles, and then they try and build these partnerships. And at Known Origin, we have kind of artist liaison, we have creative partnerships, and we have kind of strategic partnership manager that kind of manages those. I guess in the old world, you'd call it like accounts, but they feel much more kind of like a shared value exchange rather than like, we love to showcase our artists. They love to be at the cutting edge of like this new movement. So there's like kind of shared value there. So I think we're going to see more of it this year, especially some of the stuff I've seen around New York. I think the production level this year of the shows has been, it's surpassed my expectation. And I think people are starting to really treat and display the pieces with the respect that they deserve. And fundamentally, the conversation always starts with, do you value a digital artwork in the same way as a physical piece? And I think if that's the foundation, that's where we start with this conversation. If it's yes, then that's a big tick for me. And I think the things that Craig's doing with displays, that is showing a level of respect in a way, because you wouldn't display a physical piece in the wrong setting, wrong lighting. You wouldn't just put it up on the wall and expect people just to go up to it and scan a QR code. There has to be storytelling, narrative, and experience.
Yeah, speaking of values, right? Like ever since the NFTs just exploded, like 2021, it really changed our perception of value, what value is, right? Like we're so used to like physical, tangible items, like putting a high value to it. I want to bounce this question to Craig. So how do you balance those the values in terms of Canva, what Canva is doing in terms of displaying artworks and working with the major traditional institutions? How do you navigate? How do you define what value is?
That's a really big question. I don't know if anybody wants to answer exactly that. I was thinking about that earlier today, that, from a traditional art sense, I think for centuries there's always been a sense that the value of the work is tied to the craftsmanship, right? And I think people appreciated the number of man hours that go into making a piece. And when we think about the history of digital art, later today I'm going to be interviewing digital artist and digital art guru and collector Ann Spalter. And, one of the part of our conversation is going to be talking about how digital art was underappreciated for a long period, right? I think part of that is that people associate that if you have a computer helping you make this artwork, there's less craftsmanship involved, right? And I hate for conversations to always go back to Beeple's 5,000 Days, but when you think about some part of the value that was associated with that is the fact that here's somebody that we can look at this piece and we can see that he worked for X number of hours for 5,000 days, and there's like some quantification of the amount of work put into it. And I think at the point that when people understand that that the value isn't necessarily tied to man hours, but concept and making an artistic. I mean, art is, it's very relative, subjective. Everyone's going to have a different opinion, but that's a terribly difficult question to answer.
It is, and I'm afraid we're almost out of time. But before we head out, I want to just ask everyone to share what's next for you guys really quickly, and how do people connect with you. So I'm going to start with you, David. Quickly, and then we go.
We had some pretty big news drop during NFT.NYC. So we closed and got acquired by eBay on the 22nd of June. But our mission hasn't changed. It's just we want to empower and bring on those undervalued and overlooked digital artists that have they've created these amazing things. We want to give them the tools to make a living from doing the thing that they love, and that continues. So, yeah, that's the kind of alpha that came out this week from Team KO.
Congrats, that's huge. I don't have news like that. However, I am building a collection where I want to empower other creatives as well, called Hungry Artists. So you can find that on hungryartist.io, and I'm marylie.co on Twitter. So thank you.
And, in Canvia, you can follow us on socials. On Twitter, it's at Canvia Art. Most of the current stuff shows up on Instagram, where it's at canvia.art. You can check out the website, canvia.art. And my podcast is available wherever you consume podcasts. It's called Art Sense. And it's weekly, and again, talk about it being a platform for educating and informing listeners about the past, present, and future of art. So that's a pretty wide net. So thank you for being our moderator.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on Twitter at Gallerina25, and also follow the Mentry. We are about to start cohort 2, so if you're interested, you could just DM me, and then I'll share that information. So thank you all for being here with us today, and thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much. Thank you all. What a great panel.
That's all the time we have for this week. You've been listening to Art Sense. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. If you've enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe. And while you're there, please rate the show and leave a quick review. Your feedback is the key to other folks finding us. And if you'd like to see images related to the conversation, read the transcript, and find other bonus features, you can go to canvia.art and click on the podcast tab. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can email me at craig@canvia.art. Thanks for listening.